Today is Monday, September 2nd, and I'm just wondering if the Cowboys can win the NFC East again, or even, for that matter, if the Cowboys are a playoff team again.
What do you want from your favorite restaurant? Fantastic personal service, a cheery, welcoming, spotless atmosphere, and great food. The primest of beef, wagyu and lamb, incredibly fresh seafood, lobster, salmon, shrimp. Hall of Fame food from a Hall of Fame restaurant. 2 locations of Bob's Steak and Chop House, the original Bob's on Lemon Avenue, and the gorgeous new Bob's at Craig Ranch, McKinney.
And now, a word from our title sponsor.
Are all financial advisors fiduciaries? Fewer than you think. Not knowing could reduce your lifestyle. Hi, I'm Mitch Kramer, founder and CEO of Fluent Financial. A fiduciary is a regulatory term to reduce conflicts of interest in wealth management. A fiduciary always works in your best interest. A non-fiduciary advisor might put their compensation or company ahead of yours. At Fluent Financial, we are certified financial planners acting as fiduciary advisors. To learn more, go to fluentfinancial.com or Fluent Financial's YouTube channel.
Crest is again proud to sponsor the McKinney Police Association Golf Tournament and Car Raffle, October 24th at TPC Craig Ranch in McKinney. Sign up and purchase a raffle ticket for the opportunity to win a brand new Crest Cadillac CT4. It's easy. You go to crestcares.com. You don't even have to live in McKinney to win. Grab yourself a raffle ticket, sign up at crestcares.com, perhaps win that new vehicle, and do support the McKinney Police Association.
Star Power Smart Home Solutions, where cutting-edge technology meets effortless living. Control your entire home with just a tap on your smartphone. Adjust the lights, set the perfect temperature, and ensure your home is secure, all from the palm of your hand. Star Power has the experts that will transform your house into a secure, smart home. Experience the ultimate solution in comfort and security for your family. Get started at GetStarPower.com. Star Power, where innovation meets home.
The Cowboys have gone 12-7, 3 consecutive years. There's only one team in the NFL can match that kind of regular season record over the last 3 years, and that's Kansas City, and they're in another league. The winner of the NFC East, though, which was Dallas last year, has not repeated as the winner of the NFC East in 2 decades. 2 decades. That's not to say it won't happen this year with Dallas, but that's just the history of this division. We will address the particulars of the Cowboys in the coming season in just a bit. But let's first go to the NFL playoffs and history regarding them. Every year in the NFL, 14 teams make the playoffs, 7 in each conference, 4 division winners, and 3 wild cards. You look at the NFC, which we'll get to in just a moment, and you think, there's no way the Cowboys can't be one of the 7 best teams in the NFL or in the NFC. Can they? Like I said, we'll get to that in a moment. But let's look at history again. Each year, on average, you go back through the last decade and a half, 2 decades. And of the 14 teams that make the playoffs, it used to be 12, of the 14 teams that make the playoffs, history suggests 6 of them will not make the playoffs this year. Now, there can be all sorts of reasons for that. First, they play in a conference where one or more good teams suffered serious injuries and thus dropped off the map of contenders. Or that they were a good team, but then are suffering serious injuries that dropped them off the map. Or that they were a playoff team that made the playoffs because of a weak schedule. or that they're a good team who played a very good schedule, but now are dropping down and playing a softer slate, thus increasing the chances of their winning more and more games during the regular season. I could go on and on and on with the possibilities and reasons for a team making or not making the playoffs. But let's take a quick look at the AFC and then the NFC and then the Cowboys themselves. Over in the AFC, the playoff teams were Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Houston. It seems two of those are a bit vulnerable to me. Buffalo, because of the changes they've made, and Baltimore, because of that rugged division they play in with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Now, the wild cards last year were Miami and the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh. But there were some good teams that didn't make the playoffs in the AFC last year. Cincinnati was a good football team that suffered significant injuries. And what if Jim Harbaugh out in the AFC West rejuvenates the Chargers as he has other programs that he stepped right into? And then there's Jacksonville and Indianapolis, who under the radar each won 9 games last year. Hey, it does not take much to move from 9 wins in a season into a playoff spot the next season. You look at the AFC, and of the 16 teams, there are only 4 or 5 that you can look at and say, man, I don't think they can make the playoffs at all. And that's New England, the Raiders and Broncos, Tennessee, and maybe the Jets. But don't forget, in the midst of that miserable season last year, the 7-win Jets had one of the very best defenses in the National Football League. What if Aaron Rodgers still has it? But over in the AFC, you could see a bunch of turnover over there because of the depth and quality of teams. Let's go to the NFC. The division champions last year were San Francisco, Dallas, Detroit, and Tampa. I could honestly see 3 of those 4 division changes. I think San Francisco may be clear of the NFC West, but Detroit has a real challenger in Green Bay. Dallas has a real challenger in Philadelphia, and Tampa's in a division where basically anybody but Carolina can win the division. The wild cards last year were Green Bay, Philly, and the Rams. All good teams who should all be good teams again this year. Of the 16 NFL teams, you can picture a whole bunch of them being bad enough to not be playoff contenders. The Giants, Washington, Arizona, Minnesota because of their quarterback problems, the Bears, though I hesitate a little bit there, Carolina, and Atlanta and New Orleans, or Tampa and New Orleans, or New Orleans. Anyway, 2 of those 3 I don't see contending. I see only division champion there getting into the playoffs. But one must be careful in that situation. Atlanta made a lot of changes in the offseason and could be a lot better. And did you realize that New Orleans won 9 football games last year? With all their problems, they won 9 football games. And so did Seattle, by the way. And they didn't make the playoffs to 9 wins either. So, on to the Cowboys. Okay, right off the top. Are the Cowboys as good as they were last year? No, they're not in my estimation. They have far, far too many holes. Before we even get underway and considering what injuries might happen, the Cowboys will be starting raw rookies at left tackle, center, left defensive end, outside linebacker, and cornerback. And that's not even counting the fact that they are placing a whole lot of emphasis on the job Mozzie Smith will do for them at defensive tackle. And I want to be kind here. He was woeful last season. And they have no running game. They have a bunch of street guys who are the runners here. And they are perilously thin at wide receiver, offensive tackle, along the entire defensive line, cornerback. And you then look at the Cowboys of last year and those 12 wins. Do you realize how soft the Cowboys' schedule was last year? 2 games against the Giants, 2 games against the Redskins, 1 each against New England, Carolina, and the Chargers. That's 7 teams who went 6-11 or worse. Yikes. The Cowboys had about as soft a schedule as you could imagine last year. In games against winning teams for the year, including the playoffs, the Cowboys went 4-5. This year's schedule is measurably tougher than last year's schedule. You combine that with the holes on this team and the lack of ability at certain positions and their absolute problems of an injury or 2 more should strike starters in those positions. It seems like there's an assumption in Cowboy Nation, and maybe I'm incorrect here, but there seems like an assumption in Cowboy Nation that even if they don't win the NFC East, that they will certainly make the playoffs. I'd be careful, because you remember that old line about what happens when you assume something.
Today's episode brought to you by Fluent Financial, Retire Sooner, Better Lifestyle, by Star Power, Love Where You Live, and by Bob's Steak and Chop House.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoy our episodes, please hit follow, and a fresh new podcast will be delivered to you every weekday. And should you know a friend or friends who might like our work, please share it with them. Also, we'd love your questions and comments. We do a question and answer session every 2 to 3 weeks on the podcast. Send us your thoughts on X, that used to be Twitter, to @Norm's Clubhouse. That's @Norm's Clubhouse. Just Wondering's executive producer and sometime on-air contributor is my wife, Mary Dans. Just Wondering's produced by Mike Mattern and technically directed by Tim Ham of FanStream Sports. I'm Norm Hitzges, and every day I'll be just wondering about something.
And I'm Mary Hitchkus, and I'm just wondering too.